Thatcher Blackridge thrust his finger toward 8-year-old Eris Whitfield as if pointing at a stray animal. The girl went rigid, her bright yellow backpack pressed against her small frame while her mother moved silently through the marble-walled boardroom, collecting refuse from 200 stone-faced investors. Blackridge's expression contorted into something between amusement and disgust. Perhaps an elementary school dropout can accomplish what my Harvard team cannot. Harsh laughter echoed off the glass walls of the MathCore Industries headquarters. Lenora Whitfield reached for her daughter's shoulder, attempting to guide her back toward the shadows and the safety of her cleaning cart. 2 million viewers on the corporate livestream witnessed a billionaire tech mogul humiliate a child for entertainment. Behind Blackridge, massive screens bled crimson with cascading error alerts. His billion-dollar autonomous vehicle AI had been paralyzed for 3 consecutive days. His assembled experts stood motionless, faces slack with exhaustion and failure. Eris studied those displays with disturbing focus. Her fingers moved almost imperceptibly, as though tracing patterns only she could perceive. Not one adult registered the flash of understanding in her eyes. They were seconds away from the most humiliating education money couldn't buy. The catastrophe had ignited 72 hours prior when MathCore's self-driving algorithms began generating lethal calculation failures. Vehicles were colliding. Legal actions were accumulating. Blackridge's company valuation had evaporated by $3 billion in 3 days. Now, in this boardroom suspended above Manhattan's skyline, Blackridge confronted his predators. Toyota's leadership sat motionless in premium seating. BMW's delegation exchanged urgent whispers in their native tongue. Ford's observers monitored their devices obsessively, likely calculating their windfall from MathCore's implosion. Distinguished guests, Blackridge's voice carried a desperation his posture attempted to conceal. We're managing an isolated technical anomaly in our primary infrastructure. My specialists guarantee resolution within. Isolated? Toyota's CEO severed his sentence. Your platform murdered 4 individuals in Tokyo yesterday. Blackridge's face went rigid. Behind him, 50 programmers hunched over illuminated keyboards, features ghostlit by monitor glow. Harvard doctorates, MIT prodigies, Stanford luminaries, the most expensive minds available, all spectacularly impotent. Dr. Sarah Carter, his chief architect, approached with visible tremors in her hands. Blackridge, we've exhausted every avenue. Deep learning recalibration, architecture redesign, complete system reconstruction, none of it functions. The live stream counter displayed 2.3 million active viewers. Technology publications were proclaiming MathCore's extinction. Digital platforms exploded with commentary about Blackridge's hubris finally demanding payment. Eris observed from her forgotten corner, perceived by no one except her mother, who continued her systematic work around the pandemonium. The child had been present in these corporate towers since before memory. While other children engaged with playthings, Eris had studied the luminous data on forgotten displays. She'd absorbed literacy from abandoned technical documentation, mastered fundamental logic from fragmented conversations between depleted engineers. Her recreation space had been the climate-controlled server chambers. Her sleeping soundtrack had been the mechanical drone of ventilation systems. Blackridge circulated like a trapped predator, his carefully constructed empire disintegrating with each passing second. 72 hours earlier, the first autonomous vehicle had malfunctioned on a rain-slicked street in Singapore. The sedan's AI calculated a turn radius incorrectly by 3 degrees. 3 degrees translated to 6 feet. 6 feet translated to a pedestrian collision at 42 miles per hour. The victim survived with compound fractures. MathCore's legal team contained the incident within 18 hours, settlements signed, non-disclosures enforced. Then came Munich. Then Sao Paulo. Then the catastrophic failure in Tokyo where 4 passengers died when their vehicle interpreted a traffic signal as a mathematical impossibility and simply stopped processing input entirely. The car had frozen at an intersection, waiting for calculations that would never complete, until a freight truck obliterated it. Blackridge had assembled his entire technical division that same night. 300 engineers on emergency conference calls across 7 time zones, all converging on the singular question, what broke? Nothing broke. That was the problem. The system hadn't been compromised. No external intrusion. No corrupted data. No hardware malfunction. The AI was functioning precisely as designed. It was the design itself that had become poison. Now, in the glaring exposure of the boardroom, Blackridge watched his empire's death in real time. BMW's chief technology officer leaned toward his colleague, speaking just loud enough to be heard. Their whole architecture is compromised. We should acquire their patents at bankruptcy prices. Ford's representative nodded to someone off-camera on her video call. The scavengers were already measuring the corpse. Eris remained motionless against the wall, her yellow backpack incongruous against the sterile corporate aesthetic. Her dark eyes tracked the error cascades on the displays with the precision of someone reading familiar text. While the experts saw chaos, she perceived something else entirely. Patterns. Repetition. A singular mistake replicated across every system like a genetic defect passed through generations of code. Her small hand moved unconsciously, fingers conducting invisible corrections in the air. Behind her, Lenora emptied a wastebasket with practiced silence, her uniform crisp despite the late hour, her dignity intact despite the surrounding contempt. The digital counter hit 2.4 million viewers. Somewhere in that audience, competitors were recording every second of Blackridge's humiliation for case studies in corporate failure. And in her corner, unnoticed and underestimated, an 8-year-old girl saw exactly what 300 experts could not. Blackridge pivoted toward the assembled investors, his arms spreading wide in a gesture of wounded innocence. Understand what you're witnessing here. Real programming requires proper education. Credentials. Years of rigorous training at institutions that filter mediocrity from excellence. His hand swept toward his exhausted team. These individuals represent MIT, Harvard, Stanford. They've published papers. Won awards. Built systems that power half the world's infrastructure. His voice rose with evangelical fervor. Intelligence isn't democratic, ladies and gentlemen. It's cultivated through privilege, refined through access, earned through dedication to institutions that separate the capable from the. He stopped mid-sentence, his gaze landing on Eris. The girl had taken 3 steps forward, away from her mother's protective reach. Her yellow backpack caught the overhead lights. Her eyes remained fixed on the cascading errors. Something dangerous flickered across Blackridge's features. An opportunity. A weapon. You know what? His voice dropped to theatrical curiosity. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe genius doesn't require education. Maybe it's just innate. He approached Eris with predatory slowness. Tell me, child. Do you understand what these screens are showing? Lenora moved forward, but Blackridge raised his hand. The security personnel near the doors shifted position. It's a simple question. Blackridge crouched to Eris's eye level, his smile sharp enough to draw blood. My team of doctorate-holding engineers can't solve this. Perhaps you can. He gestured grandly at the monitors. Fix this, kid, and I'll give you $100 million. The boardroom fell into suffocating silence. Even the keyboard clicking stopped. BMW's delegation exchanged glances of pure disbelief. Toyota's CEO leaned forward, uncertain whether to intervene or witness the spectacle. The live stream counter jumped to 2.6 million. Blackridge's voice carried across the room like a prosecutor delivering a closing argument. 100 million. Enough to transform your life, your mother's life, your entire family's future. All you have to do is accomplish what these educated professionals cannot. He stood, addressing the cameras. Because surely, if intelligence truly is democratic, if brilliance really doesn't require training or resources or proper instruction, then even a cleaning woman's daughter should be able to. I think I see what's wrong. Eris's voice cut through his monologue like a scalpel through tissue. Small. Clear. Completely unintimidated. She took another step toward the screens, her small hand rising to point at specific error sequences. The room held its breath. Dr. Carter moved first, her exhaustion momentarily forgotten. What do you see? Eris approached the nearest display, her finger tracing a line of code that had been scrutinized by 50 engineers for 3 consecutive days. Right here. And here. And all through this section. Her voice carried the patient certainty of someone explaining something obvious. The computer is confused. Blackridge's laugh was ugly. Confused? It's a machine. Machines don't get confused, they execute instructions. But these aren't instructions. Eris turned to face the room, her small frame silhouetted against the glowing errors. They're supposed to be questions, but they're written like commands. Silence expanded through the boardroom like a shockwave. You see, Eris continued, pointing at specific syntax, when you want a computer to check something, you ask it a question. Is this value greater than 10? Is the road clear? But here, her finger moved across the screen, the code is telling the computer to make something true instead of checking if it's already true. Dr. Carter leaned closer, her eyes widening. She's talking about assignment versus comparison operators. It's like. Eris searched for the right words, like if someone asked you, is it raining, and instead of looking outside to check, you just said, rain equals yes and believed it without looking. The computer thinks it's changing reality instead of observing it. One of the MIT graduates stood abruptly, nearly knocking over his chair as he pulled up the core algorithm on his laptop. His fingers flew across the keyboard. Oh my God. She's right. Line 847. We're using a single equals sign where we need a double equals. We're assigning the value instead of evaluating it. Another engineer gasped. That means every conditional check in the safety protocol is backwards, Dr. Carter whispered. Every single one. The realization cascaded through the technical team like dominoes. Voices erupted simultaneously, programmers shouting findings to each other across the room. The error wasn't complex. It wasn't sophisticated. It was fundamental. Elementary. The kind of mistake flagged in first-year computer science courses. And 300 experts had missed it entirely. Blackridge's face drained of color. Behind him, the live stream counter hit 2.8 million. Tech journalists were already composing headlines about the most expensive typo in corporate history. Eris stood calmly in the center of the chaos, her bright backpack still pressed against her shoulders, waiting for the adults to finish understanding what she'd known the moment she looked at the screens. The solution was simple. The implications were devastating. Dr. Carter's hands trembled as she accessed the master code repository. 200 investors watched in absolute silence as she navigated to line 847. Her cursor hovered over the single equals sign that had cost 4 lives and $3 billion. She added one additional equals sign. One keystroke. One character. The change propagated through the system in 1.3 seconds. The cascading red errors vanished. The warning klaxons silenced. Every monitor in the room shifted from crimson alerts to steady green confirmations. The autonomous vehicle AI system initialized with perfect diagnostics across all parameters. 72 hours of catastrophic failure resolved by a single character correction suggested by an 8-year-old child. The boardroom detonated into chaos. Engineers shouted confirmations to each other. Toyota's delegation erupted in rapid Japanese. BMW's team was already on emergency calls to their technical divisions. Ford's representatives abandoned any pretense of composure, openly celebrating MathCore's humiliation. The live stream counter exploded past 3 million viewers. Dr. Carter turned to Eris, her eyes glistening. Where did you learn? I watch the screens when Mom cleans the server rooms, Eris said simply. The patterns are always the same when things break. Blackridge stood frozen, his carefully constructed authority evaporating in real time. Then his survival instincts engaged. He straightened his suit jacket, manufactured a dismissive smile, and addressed the cameras with forced casualness. Well. Lucky guess, I suppose. Even a broken clock is correct twice daily. His laugh sounded brittle. Certainly not worth the theatrical $100 million offer. That was obviously hyperbole for. But you didn't spot it. Eris's voice cut through his retreat like a blade through silk. She turned to face him directly, her expression carrying none of the deference an 8-year-old should show a billionaire CEO. Your Harvard team didn't spot it either. For 3 days. She tilted her head slightly, mimicking his earlier condescending posture. And time costs money, doesn't it, Mr. Blackridge? How much did 3 days cost? $3 billion. 4 people's lives. The boardroom fell silent again, but this silence carried a different weight. Anticipation. Judgment. Blackridge's face flushed crimson. Behind him, every camera captured his humiliation in high definition for millions of viewers. The tech mogul who'd built an empire on credentials and privilege, dismantled by a child who learned programming from discarded manuals and overheard conversations. Toyota's CEO leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, waiting to see how Blackridge would escape the trap an 8-year-old had just sprung on him. He couldn't. Eris's gaze drifted back to the monitors, now displaying stable green diagnostics. Her small hand rose, finger tracing invisible patterns across different sections of code visible on various screens around the room. This one isn't the only mistake, she said quietly, almost to herself. I see the same pattern in other places. Lots. Maybe hundreds. Dr. Carter's face went pale. What do you mean, hundreds? The same confusion. Telling instead of asking. It's everywhere. Eris pointed to a financial systems monitor. There. And there's another one in the medical routing protocols. And, her finger moved to a third screen, that transportation grid has 3 of them just on that page. The engineers erupted into frantic activity, pulling up different systems, scanning for the identical error. Within seconds, confirmations started echoing across the room like artillery fire. She's right. Payment processing has 12 instances. Hospital dispatch algorithms, Christ, it's throughout the entire code base. Supply chain management is riddled with them. Blackridge watched his empire's foundation crumble in real time. Every system. Every protocol. Every critical infrastructure component infected with the same elementary error, replicated like a virus through years of development. Then something shifted behind his eyes. Desperation crystallized into calculation. If he was already destroyed, he could at least control the narrative of his destruction. He stepped forward, his voice rising above the chaos with manufactured confidence. Then let's make this interesting. He addressed the cameras directly, playing to his audience of millions. Young lady, you've identified one error among millions of lines of code. Impressive. Perhaps even remarkable. He approached Eris, his smile sharp and dangerous. But finding one typo isn't the same as fixing an entire infrastructure. Our systems control autonomous vehicles, financial transactions, hospital equipment, power grids. Millions of lines of code. Thousands of interdependencies. Blackridge extended his hand as though offering a handshake to seal a gentleman's agreement. So here's my public offer. You have 24 hours. Find and fix every single error in the entire MathCore infrastructure. Every instance of this mistake across every system we operate. The boardroom fell silent. If you succeed, you get your $100 million. Documented. Legally binding. Witnessed by these investors and broadcast to the world. His smile widened. But when you fail, because you will fail, everyone watching will understand that credentials matter. That education matters. That finding one error doesn't make you qualified to rebuild an empire. He turned to the cameras, arms spread wide. Ladies and gentlemen, I present the $100 million challenge. Eris looked up at him with those unsettling dark eyes. Okay, she said simply. The trap was set. Hour 1. Eris sat cross-legged on the polished marble floor, her yellow backpack beside her, a borrowed laptop balanced on her knees. Around her, engineers worked in tense silence, pulling up system after system for her review. Lenora stood nearby, her cleaning cart abandoned, her hands clasped tight enough to whiten her knuckles. The live stream never stopped. 3 million viewers became 4 million. Tech blogs provided running commentary. Betting markets opened on whether the child would succeed. Hour 3. Eris had identified 47 errors. Each one identical in structure. Each one a fundamental confusion between evaluation and assignment. Dr. Carter documented every finding, her initial skepticism transforming into something approaching reverence. Hour 5. Blackridge paced the boardroom like a caged animal, his confident facade cracking with each new discovery. 93 errors found. His phone vibrated continuously with messages from board members, investors, competitors circling like sharks. Then he found his escape route. Wait. Blackridge's voice cut through the focused silence. He strode to the main display, gesturing at the code Eris had just flagged. Look at this. These aren't mistakes. This is sabotage. Dr. Carter looked up sharply. What? These errors are too systematic. Too widespread. Blackridge addressed the cameras, his voice gaining strength from the narrative he was constructing. Someone deliberately introduced these flaws into our infrastructure. Corporate espionage. Our competitors have infiltrated our development teams. Murmurs rippled through the remaining investors. Toyota's delegation leaned forward with renewed interest. The live stream chat exploded with conspiracy theories. Blackridge pointed at the screen. No competent programmer makes the same error hundreds of times. This is intentional sabotage designed to. No, it's not. Eris's voice was quiet but absolute. She stood, walking to the display with her laptop. Look at the variable names, USR input, with the E missing, temp data, abbreviated, CHK value, instead of check value. She pulled up another section of code from a completely different system. Same abbreviations. Same spelling mistakes. Same formatting style. Even the comments used the same words. Dr. Carter's eyes widened. She's right. This is all written in MathCore's internal coding standard. And look at the timestamps. Eris scrolled through the file metadata. These weren't added later. They were written at the same time as the main code. By the same people. The engineers began cross-referencing frantically. Confirmations cascaded through the room. These errors match our training documentation exactly. The new higher orientation materials teach this syntax. Eris turned to face Blackridge directly. It's not sabotage, Mr. Blackridge. It's how your company teaches people to program. The trap had closed. On him. Hour 8. 147 errors identified and documented. Dr. Carter's team had begun implementing the corrections in isolated test environments. Every single fix performed exactly as Eris predicted. System stabilized. Performance metrics improved. The solution was working. Blackridge stood at the window overlooking Manhattan, his reflection ghostly against the night sky. When he turned back to the boardroom, his expression had transformed from arrogance to something more dangerous. Fear disguised as caution. Stop. His voice carried the weight of authority he no longer possessed. We need to consider what we're doing here. We're implementing untested changes to critical infrastructure based on the suggestions of a child. Dr. Carter looked up from her terminal. Blackridge, every correction has been validated. The test results are. Test environments aren't reality. He addressed the investors, the cameras, anyone who would listen. Our systems manage hospital life support equipment. Financial transactions worth billions. Air traffic control interfaces. Power grid management. His voice rose with calculated panic. One wrong correction could crash global financial markets. Could kill patients in operating rooms. Could cause blackouts across entire cities. Several investors shifted uncomfortably. The live stream chat filled with concerned questions. Blackridge had found his leverage, institutional fear of change. We're talking about systems that affect millions of lives, he continued, his tone grave and reasonable. Yes, perhaps there are errors. But those systems are functioning. They're stable. Rushing to implement wholesale changes based on pattern recognition from someone with no formal training, no credentials, no understanding of the catastrophic consequences. But they're already broken. Eris's voice cut through his monologue. She stood, facing him with that same unsettling directness. You said yourself. 4 people died. $3 billion lost. The systems aren't working right now. They're hurting people right now. That was one system, Blackridge countered. We've isolated that failure. But changing everything, across all platforms, without proper testing protocols. Isn't it scarier to keep broken things than to fix them? The simplicity of the question landed like a physical blow. The boardroom fell silent. Eris tilted her head slightly. If your car's brakes are broken, do you keep driving because you're scared the repair might not work? Or do you fix them because you know they're broken? Dr. Carter's hand went to her mouth, suppressing something between a laugh and a sob. These systems are already hurting people, Eris continued. We know they're broken. We know how to fix them. So why would we leave them broken just because we're scared? Blackridge had no answer. The logic was irrefutable. The trap was absolute. Hour 9 began with implementation approval from the board. Hour 17. 263 errors corrected. System after system returning to optimal performance. Financial protocols stabilized. Medical routing algorithms running flawlessly. Transportation grids operating with unprecedented efficiency. Every prediction Eris made had proven accurate. Blackridge watched his last shred of credibility evaporate with each successful implementation. The engineers no longer even glanced at him for approval. Dr. Carter had effectively assumed command, coordinating the corrections with quiet competence. Then Blackridge saw his final gambit. The one system Eris hadn't touched. What about the quantum encryption protocol? His voice carried forced nonchalance. Surely you're not suggesting an 8-year-old can analyze quantum computing infrastructure. Dr. Carter's hand stilled on her keyboard. Several engineers exchanged nervous glances. The quantum protocol was MathCore's crown jewel, experimental technology interfacing classical computing with quantum processors. The mathematics alone required advanced theoretical physics. Blackridge's smile returned, sharp and predatory. That system processes government communications, military encryption, financial security protocols for half the world's banks. The quantum entanglement calculations are beyond most PhD physicists. He turned to the cameras. Perhaps this is where credentials actually matter. Eris had been silent for the past hour, reviewing code on her borrowed laptop. Now she looked up, her expression thoughtful. Can I see it? Dr. Carter hesitated, then pulled up the quantum protocol interface on the main display. The code appeared, dense, complex, filled with mathematical operators and quantum state variables that looked more like abstract algebra than traditional programming. The room held its collective breath. Eris studied the screen for 90 seconds. Then her finger rose, pointing to a section near the bottom of the visible code. There. That's the same mistake. Impossible, Blackridge snapped. That's quantum decoherence compensation. It requires. The quantum part is fine, Eris interrupted. The complicated math works. But this part, her finger traced a section of interface code, this is just the translator. The part that lets the quantum computer talk to the regular computers. And it has the same error. It's telling instead of asking. Dr. Carter zoomed in on the section Eris indicated. Her breath caught. She's right. It's in the classical interface layer, not the quantum calculations. The same assignment operator where we need comparison. One keystroke. The correction took 0.4 seconds to implement. The system efficiency reading jumped from 60% to 94%. The room erupted. Not in celebration, in shock. The quantum protocol had been operating at 60% capacity for 18 months because of a single character error in the simplest part of the most complex system they'd ever built. Blackridge's face went ashen. There was nothing left. No escape. No excuse. Hour 18. The challenge was complete. The celebration lasted exactly 47 seconds. Then every security monitoring system in the MathCore infrastructure erupted simultaneously with critical alerts. Klaxons blared. Red warnings flooded every screen. Engineers dove for their terminals, confusion replacing triumph. What's happening? Dr. Carter's voice cut through the chaos. We just fixed everything. Security breach detected, one of the system administrators shouted. Multiple unauthorized data transfers. Active exfiltration in progress across, oh God, it's everywhere. Blackridge pushed forward. That's impossible. Our security protocols would have caught. They did catch it. The administrator's face had gone pale. The automated response systems are triggering now because the improved processing speed finally allowed them to complete their analysis cycles. Look at the timestamps. Dr. Carter pulled up the security logs on the main display. The room fell into horrified silence as the data materialized. 18 months. For 18 months, massive volumes of proprietary data had been systematically copied and transmitted to external servers. Trade secrets. Client information. Government contracts. Military specifications. Autonomous vehicle algorithms. Quantum encryption protocols. Everything. The performance bottleneck was hiding it, Dr. Carter whispered. The security systems were running too slowly to detect the theft in real time. They were trying to analyze traffic patterns, but they kept falling behind because of the errors, Eris finished quietly. The administrator scrolled through endless logs. Estimated total data theft, 847 terabytes. Financial records, customer databases, proprietary algorithms, classified government projects. This is the largest corporate espionage breach in tech history. Toyota's CEO stood abruptly. You're saying this has been happening for a year and a half? The security systems were working, Dr. Carter explained, her voice hollow. But they were running at 60% efficiency. Like trying to watch for thieves through foggy glasses. They knew something was wrong but couldn't process the information fast enough to identify it. BMW's delegation was already placing urgent calls. Ford's representatives had their legal team on video conference. The livestream counter hit 4.2 million viewers witnessing the revelation in real time. Blackridge stood frozen, watching his empire's death accelerate from catastrophic failure to criminal exposure. Every secret his company possessed had been stolen over 18 months while his flawed systems were too broken to notice. The FBI needs to be contacted immediately, Toyota's CEO stated. This isn't just corporate incompetence anymore. This is a federal crime. Dr. Carter turned to Eris, the child who had just exposed the biggest security breach in corporate history by simply making the systems work properly. You didn't just fix our code, Dr. Carter said softly. You uncovered 18 months of theft we never knew was happening. Eris looked at her yellow backpack, then at her mother, still standing silently by her abandoned cleaning cart. I just wanted the patterns to stop being wrong. Outside, sirens were already approaching. The FBI agents arrived in the 21st hour. 4 of them, led by a senior cybercrime investigator who took one look at the security logs and immediately began coordinating with the Department of Justice. The boardroom transformed into a crime scene. Engineers were separated for interviews. Systems were locked down as evidence. Blackridge sat in a chair at the far end of the room, no longer at the head of his own table. His suit was rumpled. His carefully styled hair had fallen across his forehead. The cameras captured every moment of his disintegration. The live stream had reached 5.1 million viewers. The story had exploded across every major news platform. Tech executives worldwide were ordering emergency audits of their own systems, terrified of what might be hiding in their code. Dr. Carter approached Blackridge with a tablet. The board has drafted a statement. They need your approval before it goes public. He stared at the screen for a long moment, then looked across the room to where Eris sat beside her mother, the bright yellow backpack still pressed against her small frame. The girl who had dismantled his empire in 24 hours with nothing but clarity and persistence. Blackridge stood slowly. He walked to the main camera, the one broadcasting to millions. When he spoke, his voice carried none of its earlier arrogance. Only exhaustion. And something that might have been humility. My name is Thatcher Blackridge. 24 hours ago, I mocked an 8-year-old child in this boardroom. I used my platform, my position, my privilege to humiliate someone I deemed beneath consideration. He paused, swallowing hard. I was wrong. The room had fallen completely silent. Eris Whitfield accomplished what 300 of my employees, with their Ivy League degrees and years of experience, could not. She identified a fundamental flaw in our systems. She corrected 263 critical errors. She exposed the largest corporate espionage breach in tech history. His voice cracked slightly. She did this not because of credentials or education, but because she saw patterns clearly and had the courage to speak truth to power. He turned to face Eris directly. I'm sorry. For the mockery. For the arrogance. For every word I said that suggested your worth was determined by your mother's occupation or your lack of formal education. He gestured to the cameras. I'm authorizing the immediate transfer of $100 million to Eris Whitfield, as promised. Legally binding. Witnessed by the world. Blackridge's shoulders sagged. I built an empire on the belief that credentials equal competence. You proved that clarity matters more than pedigree. Intelligence isn't about privilege. It's about seeing what's actually there. Eris stood, her small hand finding her mother's. She walked toward Blackridge with that same unnerving directness, stopping a few feet away. It's okay, Mr. Blackridge, she said softly. Grown-ups make mistakes, too. The billionaire CEO, humbled by a child, nodded once. Then he turned and walked out of his own boardroom for the last time. The cameras captured everything. I hope you enjoyed watching this as much as I enjoyed creating it. Like, share, and comment on the lessons you've learned. Let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. See you in my next story.